We're back. T.A. Mahoney, Tales from the Dark Side. Got another one of my buddies in here. I didn't think I was going to get you in here being out of state, but we got Captain Dave Singletary. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a while. You know, we were talking about how long we've known each other. Why don't you let the people know out there the first time we met? What was your take on that?
I think it was James Manley we talked about that had brought you out to my ranch in Cross City. And, yeah, it was a little different meeting you.
Now, what I tell people is your ranch was bush gardens with a rifle.
Basically.
Zebras and just everything you can think of. Tell us a little bit about the ranch.
Well, it was an exotic game ranch. It was a high fence preserve in Cross City.
Yep.
And I started that, I think I was in my mid-20s, about 25, 26 years old. And, yeah, that's...
Electric fence, what was it, 10 foot?
It was 11 foot.
11 foot.
Elephant containment unit around it.
Yeah, it was a wild place when you were out there. I remember one of the times I was out there, I was whitetail hunting because you had whitetails that were naturally there.
Yep.
Yeah, your herd, you imported all the exotics, but I know the whitetails was something that was already existing there.
Correct.
And one of my first bucks I ever shot there, but I remember you told me that day you had something to do at the house, you were working on something, and you said, hey, Mike, just walk through the gate. And you know, when you walk through an electric gate, you're thinking to yourself, wow, this whole fence is electrified, right? And it's to keep those things in that I'm walking through. And you know, deer hunting, a rifle, you're pretty safe in most places.
Correct.
But an exotic game ranch is a whole different ball game. And
Yeah, it was crazy how I got started in that. I actually started hog hunting and then kind of turned into hog hunting on horseback, and then we built, the swamp buggies and everything, and got into the exotics. It was a little different, and some of the exotics were dangerous.
yeah, it was pretty wild. You'd go there for a hog hunt, and you'd be telling us as we're going through the woods, watch out, this is where the Cape Buffalo or the Watusi or whatever you
That's
got
right.
roaming around back there. And a lot of the stuff would hang out near the food plots because they enjoyed it, and the food plots were pretty thin on the woods. There wasn't much lifting up. But when Manley brought me out there, what'd we do? I brought you maybe an ice machine, and we went out and checked the place out. And
Yeah, I think we were brand new into the ranch then. We didn't have really a place to process any of the meat.
that's right. Just yep.
It was pretty generic, like everybody else, hanging it from a tree and whatnot. And yeah, you helped us put a little meat market together.
Yeah, a little facility y'all had where you could process everything right there. And anybody in Florida knows the most important thing for fishing or game is ice. You know, you got to keep it cold. But I remember going there that day. What I remember from the first trip is, we were talking about going hog hunting, and you said, okay, when do you want to go? And my response was, I want to go as soon as it gets dark. And I knew I was going to be buddies with Dave when he goes, you like hunting at night? And I said, that's my favorite times to hunt at night. And he said, mine too. I'll pick you up at dark. So
That's
we
right.
just kind of hung out there at the lodge you had. And man, what a great time. I think we got a bunch of kids.
We did.
I ended up bringing up over there and shooting their first pigs. And
That's right.
the one thing Dave told me right off the bat, and anybody that hunts pigs knows this, everyone is different. And it's really that way with anything,
Yeah,
animals.
everything's different. And it was, most of the hogs that we had in there, again, it was a high fence preserve. So most of the hogs that were in there had really good teeth on them. That's kind of what people wanted. There were some meat hogs in there. And there was a lot of land we had outside of that. That preserve I had was inside of 168,000 acres of state land. So there was just animals everywhere.
And I remember hearing some of the stories where one of your animals would get out, and boy, the locals,
yeah.
the word would get out, and there'd be 50 people lining that road waiting for some exotic to come out of the bush and just
Oh, yeah.
smoke it. And of course, that's the law. They're not native. There's really no.
Well, the whole thing is when I started that preserve, I didn't think anything about it. I was just excited to build it, and they were really kind of new to Florida at the time. Like we were talking earlier, Kerry Lightsey had Brahma Island. So, that's an island that was they didn't have high fence or anything, but some of the animals they had on there would migrate to the
Sure.
mainland.
Yeah.
And they would patrol it by airboat. Well, I learned real quick to hire the biggest outlaws in Dixie County as guides,
Yeah.
and that kept everybody away from the ranch.
And you had some guys that were great too.
I did.
I mean,
I did.
We hunted with our buddy Chet Tharp and
Yep.
got him on some pigs and had some fun. I got to find that video of him where we got him in the waist deep water and then told him, no, don't go that far. It's almost too late. That was that big one he shot in the swamp.
I've got so much video, but it's all on the old VCR cartridges, and I
Yeah.
keep telling myself to send it somewhere and get it all converted over to DVD. But I've got thousands of hours of stuff that we used to do.
And y'all have had, what kind of animals did you have on that ranch?
Well, we started off in the beginning, the typical Sika fallow axis. I had American bison. Then I started kind of getting into the African. I did have the elands and the scimitar oryx, black buck antelope, and there was just all kinds of stuff that we had. The sables, which are the black and white. We had all kinds of stuff. We wound up with almost 60 different species of animals, and it just grew over time.
Where do you, when you get into something, that's something I've never even thought about. Where would you, I mean, I know you have to have licenses and all
Yeah.
that stuff for the animals, right? But where do you go looking for a zebra?
They all come out of Texas. And literally you would go over there in the ranches, and they have so much land. It's so vast over there.
Yeah.
It's the largest ranches with African preserves, and they literally will take you over there in helicopters, and a lot of the stuff that we got was darted. So they were wild. I didn't want anything in the preserve, that would be considered really canned hunting,
Right.
where you would just have feeders out and animals would come to it. So I wanted to keep it as natural and realistic as possible.
Yeah.
And that's
did a
kinda-
great job at
yeah.
it. I mean, it seemed like everything around there, we got glimpses at a lot of stuff. Black buck antelope, and watch it bounce off real quick, and they may not see one for
Correct.
another month or so. You just don't know with that. But definitely a lot of game. The rams tend to be a little less scared of you.
Correct.
It seems like at a far distance, they ain't gonna let you walk right up to them.
That's about the only animal really. I mean, you have your plains game. I had about 700 acres of preserve of just pasture,
Right.
where all of your Sika fallow axis, that type of stuff. In the evening time, early mornings would come out and graze your buffalo, your capes, water buffalo, that type of stuff. But as soon as they saw you, they were gone.
Right.
And that's kind of the way I want. It was early on when I started it. I wasn't even thinking African game preserve. It was just over time. I was more excited. I got into it because I was killing a lot of hogs, a lot of deer. I was very blessed when it came to hunting, and people were always asking me, well, I want to get a deer. How do I get a deer? How do I get a hog? So I was more excited taking
Guiding them.
yeah, taking these guys and their children, and they wanted to, harvest their first animal, and I got more pleasure out of that. So as it just grew, a lot of these guys, some of them were lawyers and doctors and guys that had money that were very limited in time. They didn't have the opportunity to go to Africa or to Asia or New Zealand or wherever. And so there was a market for it, and it was very, very early on when these ranches started coming up, and we put it together.
Yeah, it was definitely an awesome place. Loved hanging out there, shooting animals, and the thing I liked the most, you were inside a gate that not just anybody was coming in. They had to
That's
kind of
right.
call you because they'd probably get a little bit of a shock if they tried to get in any other way. But what a fun time. Now, switching gears, I remember what was the change there? What caused you to get out of that kind of work,
Yeah.
a game ranch, and then on to the next?
Well, I loved it, and so we started doing terminally ill children. And actually, it was something that James Manley had brought to us, that there were terminally ill children that had different types of disorders and diseases that were never able to harvest an animal. And so when these children came, they had Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, down to some were quadriplegic, some were paraplegic. And so we had to figure out real quickly of how we were going to enable them to harvest an animal. So we had engineers that would come on board that would actually take them into a wheelchair, and they'd figure out, what extremities they could use, whether it be a blow tube for a firing mechanism, or if they could play video games. And they would put these things together, and they look like little tanks, literally. So they would get there, they'd take all these measurements, they would do it, And then in the morning, they would wheel these things out and put them on it. And remember, the rifle range was across
yeah.
from the lodge.
Yep.
And they'd sight it in. We had built a swamp buggy that we could put wheelchairs on.
I remember that.
And
Yep.
kind of like a truck in the back of a shopping center, you would have the loading bay and the trap door would open. And we had a 100% success rate with these children. And the funny thing is I used to ask these kids all the time. I was like, a lot of my fan base asked me, why would you want to kill an animal when you're, passing away? And they were very open about their disease and how long they had to live and stuff. And a lot of they came all over the country, and a lot of their family had game rooms, and their family had their legacy on the wall, things that they harvested. They were never able to do that, and they wanted to be able to leave something in the trophy room. And
That's awesome.
And so we did that for 11 years, and to be honest with you, it just wore me after a while, because 6 months after they'd leave, I'd get the call that they passed away, and it's hard.
Yeah.
But we did it for a long time, and it was a lot of fun.
Figured it was time to move on at that point, and then it was on to fishing.
Yeah, it's funny, I never told you this, but when I left the ranch, I had wanted to go fishing. I'd fished and run airboats my whole life, no blue water stuff. And I really wasn't real familiar with guides doing the fishing thing. And you had set me up on a trip with Captain Ernie.
Yep.
I don't remember his last name.
Rubio.
Rubio, that's right. And he took me out snook fishing.
Outlaw Rubio.
And that was a great trip, and that really set me on fire for that. So started the inshore thing, and then I got offshore, and I never wanted to leave.
Kind of barreled down from there.
Yeah.
I knew back then when you had the ranch, it was a fun time we spent. I brought a bunch of people up there, good friends up there. We had some good times, and I'd heard you moving on. You were done with it. And a lot of times that happens. You build something up that you enjoy. Everything's working really good. And
That's right.
It's time to move on to something else. And one thing I admire about you, Dave, is that when you get into something, you go after it. And it's shown true over the last 25 years or so that we've hung out. You did well with that game ranch. Had some of the biggest name people I've ever heard of, stars and football players and everybody else out there. Some funny videos that we probably really can't talk about.
That's right.
Because it was them, but such a good time out there. And then when you got into fishing and you got into the boat, it was a lot of humility. You asked questions and you learned it, and you realize how quick that stuff catches you when you spend the time on the water.
Oh yeah, and nobody, people are not really wanting to help you. They act like they do, but nobody's
Right.
giving you fishing numbers.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what a number was. I
Right.
didn't get that. So when
Now you did get some from me.
I did get
but
some.
I had to be on the boat. Well, y'all, you can own them after I fish it, right?
That's right. So I mean, I did have some good friends like you that got me started, and it really just grew. And the ironic thing was, when I left the ranch because of the children, I had a tragedy in my family and lost my son.
Right.
And I was, had my boat and was doing the 6-pack thing at the time. And my only piece at that time was to get on head boats, and I had never run head boats before. So I started running head boats and spent a lot of time out there. And again, it was the same thing. Even though I was always looking to catch bigger and bigger fish, it was still that camaraderie that we were talking about earlier. I get more pleasure out of seeing people catch fish or harvest the deer or the hogs, and it's entertainment, just like it is in hunting. And that's kind of what got me through that. And naturally, when you spend that much time offshore, you get more and more numbers, and it just grows.
Well, and that's what it is. It's just like hunting, and I tell people all the time, it's a numbers game. There's nothing in a seminar or one of these podcasts that's going to click for you to make you catch 100 times more fish than what you already catch. The only thing that's going to change that is the time you spend.
That's correct.
And it's, that's the thing. You see a lot of, it's kind of comical when you see, you get on the boat with friends and, you take him out to your spot, you take me to your spot. I catch a lot of fish that day, and on the way in, I look at you and say, boy, I kicked your butt today, didn't I, Dave?
That's right.
And you're thinking, yeah, Mike, my boat, my rods and reels, my bait,
that's
my
right.
spot, and yeah, you kicked my butt today, right?
That's right.
I think you were the smart one. You let me put the most in the boat where you didn't get wore out.
Well, that's true. Yeah, and you're good for that.
Yeah, then you don't get beat up. Because usually when I start getting them, I try not to stop just to put the nail in the coffin and start talking trash and
That's right.
have a good time. You know, we're gonna be talking a little bit about fishing. We kind of got off the hunting thing, letting people know who you are and where you come from, and there's a lot of fishing to be talking. So we're gonna wrap this segment up.
Right.
We're gonna come back with the next segment and talk a little more fishing. We'll be right back. We're back. T.A. Mahoney Tales from the Dark Side. I got one of my weirdo buddies with me, King of Flim Flam, Weirdo. He's a guy that's definitely has a good time when he's out fishing. I've had a bunch of them. But Captain Dave Singletary, what's up, Dave?
What's happening, Mike?
We were talking in the last segment about this exotic game ranch, Busch Gardens with a rifle that you owned for how long? 11 years?
11
12
years, yeah.
And I probably hunted up there about all of them,
Yep.
I'm thinking. Got up there when we started. Then you got into fishing. Went on to the head boat. But one thing I want to talk about today is there's been a couple situations with you. And, you know, we all think we're good anglers. We're good captains. You know, everybody's a captain, right? Whether they're licensed or not, if they run a boat, Coast Guard's going to, you know,
That's right.
they're going to say captain or who's the captain of the boat. So there's a lot of things to know. And one thing that I know with you, that I feel the same with me, never been through the same situation, but I do know this. It's hard to get me to panic on a boat because I know I'm limited to what's there, and I got to basically sometimes I feel like it's kind of scary when you get on a boat and you go, man, I know more than anybody. So everybody on the boat, I'm the smartest one when it comes to fishing. That's not always the best feeling because safety's involved and all that. Last year, and I can tell you when it was in June. The beginning of June, I'm going to Louisiana. We're going tuna fishing. We get out there, and I knew a couple boats were going out. I talked to our buddy, Captain Mark Feewox, and he was kind of concerned about a storm that was coming up. We didn't think much of it up there in the northern Gulf.
Right.
I remember waking up that morning and just having some stuff on my phone, texting to me, and Mark had sent me a text that Dave Singletary's boat went down in the middle grounds. And if y'all remember that storm kind of came from the north there, didn't it? Pensacola or something like that?
It did. It kind of grew on us when it was there. You know, it was one of those things. A lot of boats went out in that trip, and nobody was really sure what that storm was going to do.
That's actually the opening of what? Grouper and Red Snapper, right?
That was the opening day.
Yeah, that's why y'all were heading out and everybody else was heading out.
I was out there and literally started fishing a little after midnight.
Yeah, so tell us what happened that night.
So I wasn't even going on that trip. It was my son's boat and some of his friends, and I knew they were going out there. I knew some other people that were going out there, so we decided to go ahead and go. If he's going to go on that trip, I prefer to be there with him. We were probably, I was probably 75, 80 miles offshore, just getting into the middle grounds when we were there. But that storm, at night I couldn't see the storm. It really didn't show up on radar. And then all of a sudden around 12:30, I hit this cold wind hit us right in the face. It went from glass, blew up into 8-footers.
You couldn't even see it.
Couldn't even see
it was
it.
coming from.
I knew it when I felt the wind, that it was immediate. I was like, we got to get this anchor up. But it was one of those storms. They call them self-brewed storm cells, so they kind of grow on themselves. They don't go any one particular direction. So it's kind of like a washing machine. So it was all around me. So there was really no outrunning it, and it was so fast. I had so many fish on board already. The bite was incredible, and 30 minutes before the storm got there, the bite died. I mean, they didn't even show up on my radar.
Almost like they knew.
I should have known. When I looked at my bottom machine and the fish had disappeared, and then that cold wind came, I should have known. But it got nasty, and it grew, and I think it was, they got over 14 feet. And
that's incredible. If anybody's ever been to the middle grounds, and when Dave is a very seasoned captain, been on big boats now, we're going to talk about it some. When he tells you 14 feet, it's 14 feet, which probably looks about 20.
Well, I didn't see it, so I knew it was big, and I was trying to outrun it the best that I could. So it was pushing me west. I couldn't go north, couldn't go south, couldn't go home east, and I knew I only had a limited amount of fuel on board. So that was my next concern. So it's pushing me west, and this went on for hours, and to the point that I watched my fuel gauge go down, and I'm like, all right, I need to make a phone call to the Coast Guard. Couldn't get a hold of my buddies. I radioed the Coast Guard, nothing. And it got so bad out there that I had life jackets on everybody, and I finally told 3 of the guys were throwing up. They were laid on the gunnels of the boat, and it was just me, my son, one of his friends, and they were behind me, and I'm like, call out the waves, what direction, so that I could at least stay away from them. It just hit me from every direction. It was crazy.
So how long did you deal with that before you got a hold of the Coast Guard? You said you called them and there was no response?
Well, it was one of those things. I've been in a lot of bad storms. I've had a lot of bad things happen. It's just naturally what we deal with when you're offshore as much as we are.
Summertime here, you get in them.
It is. And I looked at my son and I said, get life jackets on everybody and get driver's licenses on them. And he looked at me and said, well, what is that for? And I said, to identify the bodies if we're not going to make it. I honestly, that was the only trip I think I had. I didn't know we'd make it, to be honest with you. And we had been fighting it for probably 4.5 hours, 5 hours. And I was running out of fuel, and out of nowhere, we were taking on water. I'd done everything that I could do. It was just getting worse and worse. And they had pushed me out another 20 miles west. And Coast Guard,
100 miles.
100 miles. Yeah, it was over 100. And the Coast Guard radioed me and said, Cap, we are 20 miles off your port stern, and we're headed to you. Can you keep her afloat another hour? And I said, I'll do everything I can. And that was just a weight lifted off my shoulders. And
just to hear that call, I can imagine.
It was amazing. And they were there in an hour. And it's only then that they showed up I realized the danger that we were in, because again, I could never see the white caps. I was yelling at my boys to call the direction out because it was hitting me from so many different directions. But when that cutter came up alongside of me, he hit the spotlights, and he literally, like in the perfect storm, he was so much higher than me.
Wow.
That I just saw a wall of waves around me, and when he went down, I couldn't see him, and it just was black again.
That's scary.
It was crazy.
Yeah, so how did you have to get in the water to get on board? The boat was about to go down.
It was about to go down. No, they actually, in those big cutters, I think it's a 158-foot or 153-foot cutter that they have, but they have a boat that's an inflatable that goes up inside the stern. They launch it, but they can only take 3 people at a time. So as the wave picks us up and it brings you down the wave, you go bow to bow, and everybody jumps over, which is that's a hard maneuver in itself right there while you're being picked up by the wave. So there's a lot of control crash going on there, but it took a little bit to get everybody off the boat as well.
And then the boat just had to let it go.
It was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as we got on the boat, it probably took a good 30 minutes to get everybody off the boat. And but that was the first time I've ever been through that. And then getting back onto the cutter, Coast Guard were amazing. I mean, that's when they let us know the danger, that several people had passed away. They were still actively looking for bodies out there. It was really bad. And so they actually got dry clothes on us, put us in their galley, put movies on, made us hot, they pancakes and eggs and sausage, and really took really good care of us, but let us know we were going to be out there while they were looking for people.
Yeah, my hat's off to the U.S. Coast Guard, that's for sure. Them guys out there, in the worst of it, they're coming to save you. And we've got great crews up and down this coast, really everywhere in the Gulf of Mexico that I've seen, and I'm sure everywhere else too. But thank God you got through that one. And you really don't feel that. I've been in some bad situations, but you really don't feel that scared feeling until it's over, because to keep your head straight. They're counting on you to help us, and I'm sure you keeping a level head is what kept all y'all alive.
Well, it's you don't realize it, and I'm not saying it's just me. It's probably anybody out there, but I've been through a lot of situations like that over the years of just being offshore, but something just kicks in that you're just laser focused on your job and what you're doing, and so the fear of what's going to happen and stuff doesn't
It's
even.
beyond that.
I'm worried about my crew. I'm worried about my vessel, keeping people safe. Yeah, you just keep forging ahead until something happens.
Yeah.
And I've been very fortunate.
Well, thank God you're still around, and you kind of gave up on the little boats, I think, at that point.
I did.
You talked a little bit about head boats, but where are you at now with boats? What are you doing?
Well, I did head boats for a long time and fishing, and then someone suggested to me about running crew boats. And I had no idea what that was. I've never run crew boats or been in that industrial side with tugs
Right.
and dredges. And was in Anna Maria for a while, running 80-foot crew boat over there. And about 6 months ago, they sent me to Charleston. So
They were dredging out there for a while,
It was
and then a storm came, and I think you had to. I watched you on another bad storm on a hurricane. You had to sit with the barge or something, wasn't it?
well, we had a bad storm coming in,
Yeah.
so they moved all the barges and everything. Usually they go around Egmont,
Right.
but they had to bring them over into Manatee and bring them back under the Skyway. Our boat, I had to take it all the way back to Madeira and stay on the boat during the whole entire storm because I was used to doing that with Hubbards. And yeah,
Well, and it's not just like sitting on the boat either, because you're in a storm. Sometimes you got to. Didn't you have to start the boat up? I remember seeing.
well, there's a lot going on. You're taking a lot of water, plus the where we stayed over there, all the slips.
Real high.
It was
weren't
8 feet over the seawall, so
Yeah.
you're always adjusting your lines, watching other boats. Yeah. So
they? Yeah, that was.
it was a nasty
That
storm.
was a heck of a deal. So you ended up getting on a crew boat.
I did, and so I kept that crew boat. They asked me if I wanted to go to Charleston, and
Same company.
same company.
Oh, okay.
So I went to Charleston, and there was another, set of challenges. I've never run a boat in a river, and the Wando River up there is kind of like the Savannah in Georgia, where it bottlenecks out of the Atlantic.
Right.
And when it ebbs and flows, it is brutal. So
And your
having
tide surge is what we were talking about. That it was.
it can be 7, 8, 9, 10 feet,
Yeah.
and it's
Without a storm.
without a storm.
Yeah.
And then, of course, these dredges, if anybody knows anything about dredges, they have huge cables for anchors, that come off these dredges, and you can't get tied up in those things. So maneuvering the boats, with those surges and all that current and stuff, it's, yeah.
So where do you get the reward now? I knew the reward before was watching that guy catch his bucket list fish or a kid catch a fish. And now you run the work boat, so I don't know how much of a reward that is now.
Well, I think the reward for me, yes, I do love to fish, and but I think the reward for me is it's just another challenge. Like you were talking about earlier, I've just been one of those guys that if I got involved in something, I wanted to be the best at what I did.
Sure.
And it's drove me. And I will say that some of the captains that I've worked with through the years that were older like us, even older than us, always said, Dave, you ever get an opportunity to run a crew boat, do it, because the boat handling skills that we have in the fishing industry is, you're trained not to come in contact with pylons, with other boats. It's all about anchoring and getting on that spot. And with a crew boat, everything's about controlled crashes. They're lined with tires like the tug, so everything is.
The reason why there's tires on
That's
there.
right.
Huh?
So your boat handling skills are really improved when you run a crew boat, and so I've really enjoyed doing it.
That's awesome. One of the things too, when you think about it, sometimes when you really like fishing, and I've seen this throughout the industry at different times, and people become a fishing guide, it takes the fun out of it. So you go from being that guy who works a job that's maybe not in the industry or whatever, and on your day off, we get a few of us to go, and we go out fishing, and it's my spots or whatever, and all of a sudden it's good enough for me to become a guide, and I go get my captain's license. Well, when you get that captain's license, it kind of takes a little bit of the fun out of it because it makes it work, right? You
Well,
got
it does.
pressure.
Yeah.
If me and you go as friends and we don't catch nothing, which happens, we don't catch nothing. That's what it is. But with a guide, they feel a little bit different, and I think that maybe now that you're not fishing as much, and we're talking about doing some trips coming up because you work, what do you work, a couple weeks and get a week off or something?
Yeah, I'm 3 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
So you get some free time
do.
and get to travel down here. I'm really looking forward to going offshore and doing some fishing here, and I think you may enjoy it more than if you were doing it every day.
Well, it's funny because I think being on the water in general, no matter what it is, the guys that I work with on the dredge that I'm, taking back and forth all the time, I talk hunting and fishing with them. I've forged great relationships with these guys. And a lot of these guys come from Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina. They're still good old country boys, and they like to hear those stories. And we're on the water every day. So
you ever find yourself to where you feel like you don't want to tell a story because you're thinking there ain't no way they're going to believe this one,
Well, the biggest story, I'll tell everybody right now because nobody believes this, but I actually had clients on the boat. But last year, before I'd actually left and started the crew boat thing, I was in 153 feet of water off of Clearwater, and I had a family with us and a 9-year-old boy, and he just happened to bring a 9-aught reel, and I was like, what is the point of this boy with a 9-aught? We were only going red grouper fishing, maybe some gags.
Yeah.
And but he wanted a shark, and I'm like, all right, well, go ahead and put it out there, and
that's what every boy wants.
That's
catch a shark.
He wants to catch a shark.
That's right.
We'll let him catch a shark. Well, the line started going out, and it wasn't very fast at all. It just was like just steady and just chugging, and then it stopped. And when it stopped, I went up in the bridge and I started looking out, and I saw the silhouette of this shark coming back, and I was like, it was the shape of a mako. And I'm like, there's no way a mako is coming in 153 feet of water.
Right.
That thing got wider, and wider. It actually came up to the boat, and that was my very first great white that I have ever seen. And she was snagged in the nose, and she circled the boat 3 times, and then slowly went off again. I had nothing to throw her to get her to eat. I was throwing thread fins at her, and she'd open her mouth and stuff. But as we're scrambling this whole entire time, nobody's phones were on or anything. And I'm trying to get my phone started. We're all focused on the shark.
No video.
Not one video, not one picture. And everyone's like, yeah, I call BS on this one.
Well, you had a boat full, right?
I had a boat full, and they saw it, and it was...
There's a 9-year-old that'll guarantee that story for you, I promise you.
That's right.
Yeah, there's a lot. You know what I saw recently on social media out here in the Gulf? Some friends of mine in Louisiana have told me they've seen orcas, killer whales up in the northern Gulf. And he had told this story where they were in about 12 foot of water. There was 2 of them with a little one, and they were just kind of milling around. And my buddies are charter fishermen out there, and they ran out there to take a look at them because they could kind of see them. And he said when he kind of got up in the shallow water close to the little one, the 2 big ones would come wide open at his boat and then turn off right before he got to it. And I said, well, they never hit the boat. He goes, they did it about twice, and we thought it was time to leave real quick. But saw some orcas up in Galveston. They got pictures of. I put it on the social media. Somebody else, that's where I got it from. And, of course, you can't believe everything on there, but it's probably more believable than the news we watched today for sure. But, yeah, it said Galveston, and there was a boat.
I think I saw that video today.
It was a pretty neat video to see those whales out there. And in the Gulf of Mexico, that's why I like this area the best, West Central Florida. How do you compare the fishing from South Carolina, where you're at, to here, Tampa Bay area?
Well, I will say some of the captains that I work with up there actually were head boat captains out of South Carolina. And I asked them the same thing, what type of fish are you catching over? They catch a lot of the similar stuff that we do. They still got to go out actually pretty far to get in some decently deep water over there.
So it's not like this, the East Coast here, where they can hit deep water pretty quick.
No, it's actually out of Myrtle Beach and stuff. They say they actually got to go out. Big shoal over there. But the funny thing is, I talked to everybody on the East Coast, and I have fished the East Coast. I've fished all over the world, actually. And I have never seen so many fish and variety of fish as I have in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think sometimes we talk about it on the radio, and we've named 15 different kind you can actually go target, and there's probably another 10 more that you might get. You know, like African pompano. I don't remember seeing African pompano here in the Gulf except for about the last 6 or 8 years. We started catching them.
Right.
You know what the limit is on those?
It's either 1 or 2 per boat, I think it is.
Yeah.
It's very.
I didn't know
it's
that.
Not a lot.
My first time catching them, we caught 4.
Yeah.
And there's 5
is it 2 per boat?
per boat.
Per boat, right.
And I thought it was, when you think about limits, and of course if they'd have caught me, it would have been my own fault not knowing, but I had never even seen an African pompano, and all of a sudden I catch 2 on bottom rigs, grouper fishing, and I catch 2 on flat lines. Well, I kept all 4 of them because I was thinking, well, we got 5 people on the boat. It's at least 1 per person.
Right.
So we're good. We got 4. So, of course, I took pictures and all that. And one of my guys here said to me, you know what the limit is on those? And I go, no, I actually don't. What is the limit? He said, 2 per boat, and you got 4 there.
That's
I
right.
said, that's 2 days of fishing. I knew what to say. It's all in what you tell them. I said, we fished both days and just didn't clean fish but for 1 day.
Well, you know what's crazy is, as many trips as these head boats and even recreational anglers go out to the middle grounds and around those areas, the amount of fish that comes out of there, and you can't never deplete them. It is just amazing the amount of fish that are out there and the varieties of fish. I would say the Gulf of Mexico probably has the best fishing that I've ever seen.
Sure. From north to south, I love the northern Gulf. I love Louisiana.
Yep.
They do have a spot outside the middle grounds there that's closed off, and they know that the grouper are breeding there.
Correct.
It's that area that none of us can go, and it seems like they know they're breeding and spawning and everything else. So,
Yeah.
but like you said, they move north to south year
They
to
do.
year. We caught a ton of gags 5 years ago, 6 years ago to the south. And then we could never even get a gag, one.
Right.
You get one good one or something down there to the south. But it seemed like they've been holding on the middle grounds.
They do, and west of the grounds,
Yep.
it's, we talk about having, numbers to fish and everything, but if you get out to the grounds, I think the grounds is 50 miles by about 15 miles, and there's obviously a lot of spots around it, but just driving around, you can find those little ledges and big ledges and potholes, and there's a lot of pelagics out there as well.
That's one of the things I like about going to the middle grounds. I was doing so many runs there. When you run out there and you fish, you're 87 to 100 miles from Anna Maria.
Right.
I think they start about 74 miles, 73 miles straight out of Tarpon Springs, but you're kind of running more north, and you can cut back just looking at the chart. So when you're coming back, let's say south to Egmont, you can go to the south, go to the pipeline, you're over 200 feet there.
Correct.
You're in 120, 130 in the middle grounds, then you kind of go, more south towards that pipeline, you're going to be in the 200s. And I throw my trolling lures out right there and follow that pipeline all the way into probably 90 feet before I pull them in. And we've caught wahoo and sailfish out there and just all kingfish and tuna. And there's always something on that pipeline. That pipeline is on every chart. It's on every machine that you buy today if it's got the chart on it. It runs from Port Manatee to Mobile, Alabama. And I imagine you could spend all day, every day trolling that pipeline all the way.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to catch fish.
Well, it's got those reefs that attach themselves to it and gives you a little bit of structure and stuff. So it holds a lot of fish.
A lot of scamp, a lot of grouper.
Yep.
We're going to plan a trip here coming up, I imagine. Pretty soon we're going to take Feewox out. He's putting
That's right.
Anybody out there wanting to go with Mark and Fish, definitely give him a call. My buddy Mark over there has got the bracket, I hope, is going on this week. Is it done with powder coating?
I think it just got powder coated.
Well, and he told me he was ready to roll.
He is.
Once that bracket was ready to be put on there, he had all the rigging done. He had all his wiring. It takes a couple days. He wants to do a shakedown trip, but just closing that transom in and putting the bracket is going to add 2 more foot of space.
He's got a fantastic boat.
Yeah, 34 Ocean Master, great platform.
Great platform.
A lot of people want that speed. The guy who's been out there a lot will tell you, I want the boat that rides good.
I do, and especially out there, if the seas pick up, that boat is so stable. The
Just
gunnels are
eats
nice. Oh, it's great. Great boat.
I fished with Hydrosport for a while, and they talk about smoothest ride on the water used to be their logo, or
Right.
softest ride, or something like that. And I'm telling you, it was. It was a heavy boat. It would run through those 2 to 3 footers like it was nothing. 4 footers, you felt safe. I
Yeah.
fished it in 6 to 8s before. But coming out of the hole in those tournaments, you definitely aren't going to be the first boat.
You're not.
I remember coming out of the pass one time, Hydrosport, I was with a guy named Alex, great guy, and Jim Ladner, and we were taking off out of Pass-a-Grille, and we took off, and at the time, a 34 Scarab with twin Mercs was the fastest boat out there, speed-wise, 68 miles an hour or something. And we took off first, and then they called their number, and they took off behind us. And, of course, they caught us in the pass. But when we came out around that corner of Pass Grill, and it was 6-foot seas, that Hydrosport ate it, and that Scarab had to pull back on the throttles a little
That's
bit.
right. Yeah.
But I appreciate you coming out today, Dave.
I appreciate it. I'm glad to be on the show with you finally.
We've had a good time, and I'm glad you made it out of that middle grounds trip. I can tell you, being somebody in Louisiana and hearing your buddy's boat went down didn't make me feel too good, because we're all, it's like looking at that thing in John's Pass at Hubbard's, that monument they have
right.
there. And, there's some people that walk by it and look at it and read it, and there's some people that can feel that. And I'm one of those ones that can feel it, and I'm glad you made it out, buddy.
Thank you. The sea is very unforgiving. If it calls your name, that's it.
It's time to go. You ain't going to stop it.
That's right.
Thanks for coming out today,
Appreciate
Dave.
it, Mike. Thank
Captain Dave Singletary. We'll get with you all next time, see who I'm going to have, some other flim-flam weirdo.